Vigilantes. It is my pleasure to be here with James Poulos. Did I say your name right? James Poulos? Poulos?
That's pretty good. It's been Americanized into Poulos now, so that's what we say.
Nice. Okay, so James Poulos, thank you for being here. I've been wanting to talk about this topic in Bitcoin and technology for the longest of time, and every specialist on this topic refuses to talk about this a very important subject matter. It regards our humanity, it regards the intersect of who we are and technology as it's enveloping everything around us. I was recently in San Francisco, and though I think they're called the Wawa cars or the Wawu cars, they're self-driving taxis. I thought that was the freakiest thing.
Yeah.
I saw the surveillance state. I saw how that could become like a tyrannical edifice. So James, thank you so much for being with us, because there's a lot that we need to cover, and I'm just very grateful for your time here with us. How are you doing today?
Happy to do it. It's a good day. It's always a good day to talk about this stuff.
So you wrote a book a couple years ago called Human Forever. That's the title of the book, correct?
Human Forever: The Digital Politics of Spiritual War. Yes, 2021.
That's a very heavy topic. I don't think a lot of people have attempted to really embrace it. I've probably been one of the only ones that have dabbled in getting into it within the Crypto Vigilante newsletter. It is, I don't know if you know this, but it's a Austrian economic focused financial newsletter. I cover fundamental analysis. We also teach people operational security and technical analysis. So it's a financial newsletter for crypto. I enjoy that work a lot because I get to express myself and talk about these things. And then I found you to be the person who's been really articulate in defining what this means. And before this call, I was explaining to you how most people that are within this wave of thought, they really don't explain what Bitcoin monasteries are. So I really want to get into it with you, because we see a bastardization of crypto. Everyone recognizes that there's something within the crypto experience at this present moment that is antithetical to what Bitcoin and crypto presented themselves to the world as. We had an emphasis on utility, really serving others with use cases, and now we've recognized that over the years there have been a lot of energies that have psyoped the use of crypto, and we find ourselves relishing in stupidity, and people champion it with meme coins and say, well, utility does not pump. Well, the dumber something is, the more retarded something is, the more it will go up in value. So Bitcoin and crypto in general have gone through a process that, if you look at it from a very critical perspective, you can get upset. But I've seen the silver lining in all of this, and I've realized that this is humanity playing with something like children approaching something new that they've never discovered before, the ability to create assets on chain, to create things on chain in the most efficient, interoperable, fastest, and cheapest way. And I find them with the whole meme coin environment to be in the process of playfulness. And James, you and others see this whole on-chain world, but you guys have a very profound understanding as to what this means. What is Bitcoin monasteries? Where did this term originate? What does it mean?
Sure. Well, if you want to understand what people are talking about when they talk about the Bitcoin monasteries, you got to start by understanding what Bitcoin is and what monasteries are. And just starting there, breaks it into, I think, two pieces that there's a lot to talk about, but people kind of at least have some familiarity with both of those terms. My experience has been, ironically, it's people who really understand Bitcoin who struggle to understand the church and the monasteries. And it's people who really understand the church and the monasteries who struggle to understand Bitcoin. Many of the Christians who I have spoken with have even gotten to the point of saying, like, well, I'm too stupid to understand Bitcoin. I can't use this. I'm not even going to try. I don't care if you tell me that it only takes a half an hour of focused attention to go over to canonic.xyz where human fervor is sold in Bitcoin on chain, and take the time to create a wallet, sort of poke around and buy the book. No, I'm too stupid. This seems like it's demonic. This technology stuff is it's out of control. It's over my head. I'm just going to back away. I'm certainly not here to tell Christians not to surrender and sacrifice things of this world to God, of course. But by the same token, Bitcoin is not just a technology, but it's, I think, properly seen as a kind of weapon. Much of the technology that Americans love to use as entertainment began its life as military technology. This isn't some like esoteric teaching. It's out there. GPS, touchscreen, cryptography, VR. Many of the technologies that Americans take for granted as a source of entertainment began, whether DARPA projects or DoD or some NSA military industrial complex, In-Q-Tel, you name it. The guys with the guns created it first, and a big part of America's explosive economic growth has to do with that pipeline that was created, where we start with federal support for innovation for the sake of military and intelligence advantage. That spawns this whole set of new technologies, and then over time they're kind of repurposed or spun off into civilian applications, which typically take the form of entertainment. So I think that accounts for that spirit of play that you talk about with regard to Bitcoin. But we have to understand that the reason why Bitcoin exists in the first place and why it is so powerful is because it does function as a sort of weapon. And it does pose a certain kind of strategic threat to existing institutions, to existing currencies, and ultimately to existing forms of control. Bitcoiners tend to understand this about as far as it goes, where, this is what empowers the little guy to participate in, peer-to-peer financial transactions and all the things that you can build out of that. And they sometimes revel in the fact that this is so threatening and so powerful to the powers that be. And that's all fine. But what we also have to understand, and what we've started to see, is that the powers that be are just as capable as you and me, and in some ways far more capable of buying Bitcoin and of holding it and watching the number go up, and piece by piece and block by block, reducing Bitcoin to just another asset class in their basket of investments that they tailor down into a sort of kids' table where they expect ordinary people to spend the rest of their lives. That itself is a kind of coercive use of the tool of Bitcoin to keep people really enslaved to a financial system that is structured to, at best, pay little regard to their soul and to the fate of their soul, and at worst, to actively harm their soul and point their soul in a spiritually dark direction. And with that, you can begin to see that, the soul and the financial system at first blush might seem like two very different things, but in fact, they're actually quite interrelated. You can think of things like usury or simony to take two examples that are popular from the Bible and from theologians who are trying to understand how to approach the financial system. Usury, charging exorbitant interest on loans, and simony, which is the buying and selling of. It ended up being ecclesiastical privileges, but really it's supposed to be that you're buying and selling the gifts of the Holy Spirit. This goes back to Simon Magus and an ex-sorcerer who decided that in fact he would become a Christian, and asked the apostles if they would be so kind as to basically sell them their gifts of the Holy Spirit, so that he too could go around and heal people and do it the right way. And of course, he was harshly rebuked, and he was told to go away. And perhaps if he prayed hard enough, he would not be harshly judged by the Lord. So the soul and the financial system are actually much more intertwined than we think. And Bitcoin, being a very powerful weapon, a financial weapon, also has profound implications for the soul. And if the people who control Bitcoin are people who don't believe that the soul exists, or don't care about the fate of your soul or their own soul, or intend to use the power of Bitcoin to lock people into an immutable system of record that is intended to replace or substitute for the church, and to replace and substitute for Christianity, then you can begin to see some of the spiritual stakes at play. So that's kind of where I would begin in laying out, what the relationship between Bitcoin and monasteries might look like. Because after all, people in the monasteries, the monks and the nuns, they care more about the soul than anything. They spend hour after hour praying for the salvation of the world. They are the ones who have given up just about everything that you can give up in this life, for the sake of Christ and for the sake of dedicating your life primarily to acquiring the Holy Spirit, praying for the salvation of the world, and that kind of spiritual power and authority is something that is becoming more important. And people are thirsting for it more in the digital age, because we all know now, there's no doubt about this, that technology has been advanced to a point and in a direction where the old modern ethics and values and slogans that we'd come to trust and rely on for so long. If you can dream it, you can do it. Follow your dreams. All that kind of sort of self-esteem, motivational stuff. It seemed like it was good enough for a while, but in the face of what technology has become, it dwarfs us, and it calls into question, why should we go on existing? Why should we go on being human? Why should we get out of bed in the morning? Why should we have kids? Why should we have sex? Why should we go on a date? Why should we leave the couch? Why shouldn't we just jack directly into the matrix? Why shouldn't we just disappear into the ooze of collective consciousness? Technology's gone in a direction, and it is accelerating and looming over us in a way that brings all those sorts of deep, ultimate, universal questions back to the surface of our consciousness and our experience. And modernity doesn't give us the answers to those questions that we crave. And so people are, beginning to realize that they have to look back further. And well, how far back do you have to go? And where do you want to look? And the answer is going to be found in the oldest religions, in the religions that are native or original to your civilization. And you see Americans starting to do that, and you see people around the world starting to do that, especially in the handful of major powers geopolitically that are also first-rank digital powers. So the monasteries, the church, spiritual authority that people can trust, institutions that have been around longer than any other, these are becoming more powerful, not just in terms of their appearance in the world, but in the tug that they exert on our hearts and spiritually. And at the same time, you've looked at the candle charts as much as I have. The number is in fact going up. Bitcoin is revealing itself as a universal field, as a protocol that is more powerful than any platform. and more powerful than any group of people who are trying to consolidate their control by encouraging everyone to fall into a single feed. Obviously here I'm thinking of Elon Musk. I think on balance so far, Elon Musk has helped many people avoid a lot of misery, and that's something that matters in this world that we live in. But he wants that app for everything, in the same way that Sam Bankman-Fried wanted to do the app for everything, in the same way that Vitalik wanted Ethereum to be the world computer. Everyone's chasing after the one feed, and they want to rule the one feed. And what we see with Bitcoin is, I think, a dawning understanding that if we are going to that sort of master feed model, in order for that feed to really not just be dominant, but have the kind of authority and legitimacy that it needs, it's going to need to run on Bitcoin. I think it's safe to say. My expectation is that that X.com, or whatever it ends up being called, is going to develop in a direction that is inexorably tied to Bitcoin. It is, I think, something that's already underway. People are recognizing that you need that kind of protocol in order to achieve that kind of legitimacy and authority. And so Bitcoin is a powerful beast. It's a powerful weapon. And if it falls under the control of people who do not care about the soul, or are interested in stamping out the soul or stamping out the church, we're in for a very rough time. That doesn't mean that the church should take over the government or take over Silicon Valley. But it does mean that throughout history, humans develop powerful technologies, dangerous technologies that can hurt or kill. And questions arise as to how we should relate to these technologies. When should we use them? When should we not? What should we use them for? What should we not use them for? We're developing technologies right now that can simulate just about anything, perhaps including the soul. And there are deep questions about who we can trust to tell us the best way to use and to not use these technologies. And so when you think about Bitcoin monasteries and what that might mean, ultimately what I think it's referring to is that Bitcoin and the monasteries are going to be the two most powerful and important institutions that people turn to or will turn to understand their place in this technologized world, and that looking to the monasteries for spiritual guidance and authority over how to approach our relationship to technology, especially to Bitcoin, is going to become increasingly important and increasingly prevalent as we watch so many people make really grievous mistakes with technology, mistakes that lead to their destruction. Nobody really wants that, but the line from biblical teaching about following Christ being the narrow road, a narrow path. That means there are basically infinite other paths that you can go down that will not lead to salvation. And I think as technology and the internet creates possibilities for people to explore infinite wrong ways to go in their life that they couldn't have even imagined previously, that biblical teaching will become more clearly manifest in the world. And I think Bitcoin and monasteries are going to be at the center of how those who are trying to stay on the narrow world will experience the reality that they live in.
So in order sometimes to really understand the concept, it's very good to kind of dialogue with its opposite, with its contrary or contradictory opposite. And there's been a dialogue on what is now being referred to as the Cyborg Theocracy.
Yes.
What is a cyborg theocracy?
Right. So, if the idea of Bitcoin monasteries has to do with looking to those who are dedicating their lives to acquiring the Holy Spirit and praying for the salvation of the world, and approaching them in humility with ultimate questions about how to relate to our most powerful and dangerous of technologies, then the cyborg theocracy is just simply the opposite of that. Theocracy bad in the United States. We have a constitution. We're not supposed to fuse church and state into one entity. I know that, many Americans and really, Europeans too, anyone in the West who considers themselves to be modern, or maybe even some of the postmoderns too, they look at the idea of a close relationship between church and state as a big problem, something to be afraid of, something to fight against. And so certainly, the idea of any kind of theocracy was repellent to most people in the West for hundreds and hundreds of years. But what has become more and more tempting to people in the West, especially in recent decades, is the merger or the fusion of the human and the machine. Machines have become, I joke and call them the real five eyes. So this is, let's see if I can do this. Instantaneously interoperable, innumerable, that's three. I put myself on the spot. Anyway, the point is, invisible, yes. Information entities, right? So instantaneously interoperable, innumerable, invisible information entities, five eyes. In other words, things that we thought were characteristics that only belonged to angels and demons for, until a couple decades ago. Now these characteristics can also apply to technologies. Seems like a big deal, right? And so
you guys just got a lesson in angiology real quick. Thank you.
So the ability of humans and machines to merge together has been dramatically strengthened by the way that our machines have become increasingly disincarnate, or capable of existing almost in two places at one time. Zero latency, collective action. How many of them can dance on the head of a wafer? And so as it has become more difficult to integrate the technic and the machinic into the human person in an ever more intimate and comprehensive way, that temptation has been strong, and people want to participate for various reasons. Some of which are they want to make all the money, right? Some of which are they want to accumulate power. Some of which are, they grew up watching a lot of science fiction and they just can't, liberate themselves from these fantasies that were formed in their minds when they saw Return of the Jedi in the movie theater or whatever. Many reasons. Some people even think that it's, sort of bewitchingly evil, and they look not to sci-fi, but they look to horror and to cyberpunk, and they want to embrace the darkness and they want to do it with machines. By the same token, there are other people right now. No, we're going to create cyborg angels. It's going to be amazing, you guys. We're fighting for good. So many paths, many wrong directions can lead you to the desire to merge the human and the machine together until they're indistinguishable, or until the human, our given human identity, is subsumed into this kind of cyborg collective. Some people talk about it as a collective consciousness. Some people talk about it as the light of consciousness. Some of them are out there talking about how, we're just going to continue to increase our ability to go fast and to go long distances. And eventually we're going to approach the speed of light, and eventually we're going to meet or maybe even exceed the speed of light. And at that point, we can't be human anymore because we've crossed over into this other form of being. So lots of temptations out there saying, yes, abandon your humanity, come be a cyborg. And so as the desire for theocracy has waned in the modern and postmodern West, at the same time, the desire to live the cyborg life has strengthened. And at a certain point, I think you get this convergence where people start saying, well, wait a minute. If technology wipes out all the old religions and we're building a God, and technology gives us the ability to merge with that God into a post-human collective consciousness, then what form of government are we going to have? How are we going to organize ourselves, if not in some form that fuses together the religion of tech, the worship of tech, and the control mechanisms of technology over society. And that's the logic of the cyborg theocracy. It sounds like it's just a clever term that some smart guys made up one night, maybe after drinking too much or whatever. But it's not. It's just the logical descriptor of the form of being that suddenly many people find themselves either being forced into or being tempted to build. And when you look at it that way, you'll see that, the cyborg theocracy is in that sense simply the opposite of what Bitcoin monasteries, in the sense that I tried to describe, would be.
Okay, so I have a question and a comment that maybe if you want to build on it.
Sure.
So for those watching right now, I've never met James in person. How do we know if James is not an AI right now, a language model speaking to me? So when we talk about the spiritual, these existential questions that really ground us into examining our life, we have to also emphasize the human, the personalist, our lived incarnate experience. So why is it that we emphasize, because I include myself as one of the guys that talk about Bitcoin monasteries, why is it that we emphasize Bitcoin and not like Ethereum monasteries or Solana monasteries?
Sure.
And from my own analysis, James, I've seen that it is because we need to have technology rooted in physical space. Therefore, we need to have proof of work as that connection between the digital and the physical in order for us to have trust and to save time. Because in a proof of stake world, or in a world of the cyborg theocracy that is centralized Silicon Valley, we have to trust, we have no choice but to trust central authorities. And the more that these language models evolve, the more confusion that they will create, and the more noise they'll create on the internet, and the less connection we will have to sifting through all that noise to attain proper signals of what is truth. Not that you can't find truth amongst the noise, but when we're grounded in proof of work, we have a verifiable spent energy that is wasted, that is in the most verifiable form in the world, which is Bitcoin miners themselves. And when we attach data to proof of work, we, in a sense, incarnate that what we find most important, truth and worthy of honor, we bring that to our present state, to our physical, reality within our historicity and everything. And we can save each other time in connecting with each other. And when I think of Bitcoin monasteries, I see that the reason why it's important is because of amongst many things that Satoshi created, it's the proof of work element, which I always have seen it as a way to differentiate between noise and signal. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, proof of work is essential, and recreation can be enjoyable, no doubt about it. If you work all the time, in some ways that'll help you a lot, but in other ways it can also eat away at you and eat away at your soul, and you neglect your heart. So I'm not here to say that recreation is bad. You want to create a meme coin, you want to do proof of stake, like knock yourself out, but you're playing around. And in the world where we are trying to build on a foundation of rock and not of sand, and that we need to do this in order to ensure that we're not swept away by our own tools swarming over us, eating us until there's nothing left, we need proof of work. And to me, what's especially interesting and important about proof of work is it's not just about the physical and the material. It's also about the invisible and about the power of what is invisible. Because work can appear in the world. You can look at someone's works and you can be tempted to pass judgment on them on the basis of their works. Faith without works is a very barren thing. But work itself, as far as concerns the investment of energy and the investment of time, if you look at these things spiritually, if the Holy Spirit is not present in the work that you are doing, in the energy that you are putting into an endeavor, then what Christ and his apostles and the church and holy tradition teach is that those works are going to be barren. They're going to be fruitless, even to the point of, if you're saying the right words and all the prayers and you go to all the divine services, but if your heart is cold and if your heart is closed and if the Holy Spirit is not present within you, then you're really just going through the motions. And so proof of work is important because it helps people to understand that that if you're not putting spiritual energy into your endeavors, into our shared work, then you can't expect very good results. And to be sure, this isn't something that's on the minds of every coiner out there who's mining away. But when you look at the way that Bitcoin functions as a weapon, if you consider the basics of military strategy, whether you're on land, on the sea, or in the air, what you're doing is you're deploying force into a slice of space-time. And in order to deploy that force, you have to commit energy. And we can measure that energy in watts, or we can measure that energy in something else. But it is measurable, and it is sort of proof. It's proof that you're serious. It's proof that you're committing some of yourself, and especially in a world where we are, in fact, mortal beings in this slice of space-time that we occupy. You're really, to give of your time and energy is to give of your life to a certain measure. And that's why proof of work is so important. Proof of work is a way in which, especially, just sticking with the Christians for a while, a way in which Christians can ensure that Bitcoin does not become that monster that eats the world, something that dwarfs us and reduces us to a subhuman condition. Bitcoin has the power to onboard us all into the cyborg theocracy. Bitcoin doesn't care if we're used in that way, rather than in a more spiritually ennobling way that preserves our humanity. And so through proof of work, we can apply our energy, our spiritual energy and our physical labor to train and teach and control this incredibly powerful weapon in a way that ensures that what we do with it and what it does with us strengthens our way of life, strengthens our form of government, strengthens our humanity itself. And when we approach things that way, we can understand that, we don't need a theocracy. I think, a lot of guys who are headed into the trad world are either worried or excited about the prospect that we tried America failed. It's modernism, it's liberalism. The Constitution isn't really enforced anyway. We need the God Emperor. We need the fusion of church and state into a single thing. And for me, Orthodoxy has a fundamentally different understanding of the proper relationship between church and state. And a lot of Westerners look over at Russia and they're like, oh no, it's emperors and it's Rasputin. It's like, well, that was a specific historical time. You look at the teaching of the church. The teaching of the church is you want symphonia. You want harmony between not a strong church and a strong state, but a healthy church and a healthy state. And when you have harmony between these two institutions, then the possibilities for human flourishing greatly increase. Of course, you got to understand human flourishing in a spiritual way first, and not just in, well, how about everyone's standard of living? How about our GDP? Those are nice things. But we know in the end that you can't take this stuff with you, no matter how high the number goes up. And so, when you want to look for ways to take these powerful technological tools and ensure that not only do they allow us to build algorithmic markets and to create things of value and share and exchange things of value, that's all fine. That's good. We want to be able to do that with one another instead of having to rely on some monstrosity hovering above us to just dispense this kind of fake mana from fake heaven to keep us alive. So we can do that, but we can also do that in a way that understands and reflects that the authority under which we're doing all these kinds of things is not coming from a person, it's not coming from a machine, it's not coming from a government, but it's coming from the world of spirit. It's coming from the holiest people among us, and it's coming ultimately from God.
So I'm from a school of thought in Bitcoin that Bitcoin is meant to be much more than a financial system. In the early days, my friends and I used to talk about Bitcoin as money, or the money properties of Bitcoin, as merely the first applications of the Bitcoin protocol that Satoshi gave within Bitcoin so that it can fuel for it to run a global supercomputer. So I've always understood Bitcoin to be a global supercomputer that has been, for XY reason, has been kept at bay. And my audience here is pretty familiar with this big blocker worldview that I've always held to, which in recent times, as of 2 years ago with Ordinals, we've found a way to hack our way into BTC, which is the predominant Bitcoin chain, to start arbitraging data on chain. Now, people in BTC are starting to learn that Bitcoin is Turing complete, that Satoshi did give us a programming language script, Bitcoin script, so that we can compute whatever we want on chain. But BTC as it stands right now, I only see it serving a very limited, it's a very limited environment. It's really mostly used as a store of value. And if we see the entities and the individuals around investing in BTC, we see entities like BlackRock, we see entities like Jeffrey Epstein funding the MIT Digital Lab, which led to a lot of the energy behind the Civil War that took away a lot of the opcodes and other capacities that are found within the Bitcoin original design. Yeah. So my question to you is, can Bitcoin in its present state serve Bitcoin monasteries? I don't see how it can. It's almost like it's almost like a paraplegic at this moment in time, barely in out of a coma, but still in bed. Still bedridden. That's my vision of Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question or any debate at this point that BTC in its current form is simply not what appears in the white paper. It is not Satoshi's vision, to use some loaded language. Some people made some decisions, and the decisions resulted in certain changes to BTC, and we now see that as a result, we have these scaling problems, and we need an L2, we need an L3, we need an LN, we need an L infinity. Like, where does it end, right? We've seen what's happened in El Salvador, where you can use Bitcoin and so forth, but it really hasn't become the currency of the country in the way that it was even originally envisioned for El Salvador. And I think this is all very much out in the open, and some people think and that's good, and some people think and that's bad, and some people are kind of confused in the middle. And obviously a lot of guys in BSV took the attitude of, we live off of your hate, we drink your tears, we don't care what you think of us, we will go down with the ship if we have to, pursuing Satoshi's vision. And I had some experience of those conflicts as a result of the fact that when Canonic.xyz launched, It ran on BSV. When my book was written onto Bitcoin, onto the blockchain, it was done through BSV. And when my book first came on sale at Canonic, it was for sale in BSV. And a lot of guys got, a little bit riled up when they discovered that they could not, in fact, use their BTC to buy Human Forever in the early days. And couldn't even use, Bitcoin Cash. And so I get some of these, well, why are you using this shitcoin, bro? Like this. And, my answer was simply because it works to allow me to sell my book on chain for Bitcoin to anyone right now. That's why I'm using it. And the reason why I'm not using your coin is because it doesn't allow me to do that. The fees are too high. The economics don't work. It's simply not a protocol in its current state that allows me to do what I am doing right now, which is important. Because it's not just about read my book, bro, although of course I want bro to read my book. It's about demonstrating through the medium that I'm writing the book about what is possible with this technology. And how if you can't use that technology to do something as simple as create a marketplace for knowledge and wisdom in the form of books, then how do you expect this technology to change the world other than to become, just one more asset class in the basket of Wall Street offerings that just further entrenches the system? So, I was not like one of these early technologists who was hard at work on forking the chain and got sucked into the Civil War and had those fights and lost money or gained it. That wasn't how I came into it. I came into it as a PhD in political theory from Georgetown University. It took me 10 years to get that stinking degree, but I finally did in 2017. And I looked around and I said, you know what, if academic political theory has nothing to say about what technology is doing to the world right now, then it deserves to die. And I didn't want to be, the last to die for a lie or whatever. So I started to spend a lot more time on theology and technology than I did on political philosophy. And that led me to write a book like Human Forever. And it led me to exclusively put it up for sale, to put it on chain, put it up for sale, in Bitcoin. And coming out of the gate, the only way to do that was BSV. Fast forward to today, and there have been some various improvements and advances and tweaks and such. And you can now, I'm happy to say, you can buy Human Forever in BSV, BTC, or BCH. Now, if you're going to use BTC, you might be paying a little bit more. Then again, if you're using BSV, you might be crying because of what the cash value of your coin is. Some people don't care what the cash value of their coin is. Some people do. The book is priced in dollars, but it's floating. So my experience with Bitcoin in this regard has been an experience of just a guy who's trying to show ordinary people, especially Christians, for the reasons that I described, because we are getting sucked into this spiritual war and there is this digital politics revolving around it. But ordinary people, ordinary Americans, that if this weapon falls into the wrong hands, it will be used against you and you will suffer unduly. But if you roll up your sleeves, take one step in a scary direction, maybe take 30 minutes to humble yourself and learn a little bit. You don't have to become a PhD in nuclear physics in order to understand how to buy the book. Right? If you do this, then you are taking the power back and you are creating, once again, the possibility of ensuring that there is a spiritual authority you can trust that is above your technology, rather than your technology being above you and any spiritual authority that you can find. That's what's at stake. And so that's why I was willing to, listen to the maxis get mad at me for using BSV or whatever. And, and my response was, hey, I'm doing this because it's the only way I can do it. And if you guys, give me a way that I can do it, then awesome. And then I hear about Lightning or whatever. And then, that still isn't good enough to create an algorithmic market for books or for anything really. Lightning, I think, has been a disappointment, and I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. We're learning things. We're all learning things on this journey. And so BTC in its current form is definitely crippled. It just is, and it has created an artificial need for things that haven't really proven the ability to work so well. And that's why people are not, well, maybe it's Solana, maybe it's something else, and it's a free market, so we'll see what people can do. But you go back to the white paper and it's not some bizarre document written in some inscrutable language that people have to sort of pour it. It's written in a pretty plain language for a document of such profound technological significance. And I think that Bitcoin, one way or the other, will scale. It's going to require an understanding of the spiritual stakes, and it's going to require some humility in the face of the recognition that treating these things like toys and having battles of ego over them, that's not going to get Bitcoin where it needs to go and ultimately where it's going to go.
Well, it's happening in present time. I don't know if you noticed that, like the BTC core devs, they are rolling out a series of opcodes that they did not allow to flourish within BTC, and in some instances took away from Bitcoin's original design. They call this the Great Script Restoration. So 19 opcodes, of which opcat is the first. And quietly, this is happening. And at the forefront of this, who are actually exercising and teaching developers how to use these tools that Satoshi gave us to compute on chain, are all BSV developers that have had over a decade of playing with Bitcoin's fullness. So now that's why they are leading the entrepreneurial on-chain world on BTC and on other blockchains that are of UTXO origin, like Bells, Fractal, Radiant, to just name a few. And what we've discovered and what I've realized is that we're all big blockers now. The entire Bitcoin space is a big blocker space, and including BTC. There's the most on-chain market activities happening on BTC, and it's something that it's over 50% of all transactions. Over 50%. Since for the past 2 years, consecutively, over 50% of all transactions have been happening on-chain activity, market-driven economic activity on BTC, which I think is incredible. But I still can't deny what you said, that Bitcoin BTC has been held captive. All of these capacities have been kept away. They wanted people to forget about these aptitudes that are proper to Bitcoin. Its computational power, its ability to have microtransactions. There's just so much. You can really program anything you want on the Bitcoin network at scale. I know that sounds wild for the person who first hears this, but a number is just a number, and Bitcoin is a Turing-complete machine. And now all of the Bitcoin core devs and everyone in the BTC world were previously known as small blockers. They won't say this out loud, but they all understand this. They all have this understanding that Bitcoin is Turing complete. So I see that what they're doing right now by laying out all of these opcodes through what they're calling the Great Script Restoration is that they're laying the foundation to, if they have to, if they choose to in the future, to scale the block size on BTC, to have more on-chain capacities within BTC. So overall, the future looks bright, in my opinion. And one thing I'd like to emphasize to everyone watching this, and maybe if you could please talk about this, there's a lot of low time preference when we talk about Bitcoin monasteries.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the historical horizon within Bitcoin monasteries? Do you see something taking into effect with like some monastic group becoming developers, miners themselves? I mean, It seems as if this is something that is inevitable to happen because Bitcoin is, like you said, it's a weapon that is so important that has to be safeguarded by people that are by the best of us. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Western Europe became what it is because of the monastic class. Wherever you see a university, the first universities throughout Western Europe were monasteries. And the Irish were actually very influential in that. A lot of Irish monks were actually the founders of a lot of the universities throughout Europe. A lot of people don't know that. So it's this monastic class that we don't only find in Christianity, but in other cultures, like Buddhism, for example. And you have like Shaolin monks that preserve the knowledge and wisdom of their culture and their teachings throughout time. Their embrace of Bitcoin is important going forward. Where do you see this historical horizon?
Sure. I mean, it's on the one hand, we should be hastening to do the work of God, and it is later than we think, and we are only getting older in this little slice of space time that we occupy. But on the other hand, we have to keep in mind that the importance of the low time preference. So much of what's going on in technology and spirituality is is very mistaken. It's this attitude of, oh, we're bringing the apocalypse. And some people say that's a good thing, and some people say that's a bad thing. We need to, humanity's coming to an end. That's a good thing. That's a bad thing. All of this stuff is known to God, and humanity can take a lot of punishment without losing its character. You look at the 20th century, people had powerful reasons to think that the world might come to an end soon. Millions upon millions upon millions dead, world war after world war. You go back to the Middle Ages, one of the reasons why people think of it as the Dark Ages is because there were some really apocalyptic seeming, there's a volcano that sort of screwed everything up and killed off all the crops for a scary number of years. Obviously the Black Plague, fall of the Roman Empire. Human beings cause ourselves and one another to suffer unduly as a result of our stiff-necked refusal to accept that God is in control and our fate is ultimately in God's hands. And so, Bitcoin can go on for a long time, and the human race can go on for a long time. And it's prideful and presumptuous of us to say that we know when the end of days is coming, or that we're going to bring it about. That's certainly not what Christ told us was going on, and I think we need to bear that in mind. So, low time preference is very important, and what you say about monasteries and their ability to preserve civilization and to restore civilization is important. I'm glad that the devs are coming around to understanding that the restoration of Bitcoin is possible and is good. But it's important that we remember, even as we see things going in the right direction and see grounds for hope, that the goal is not to fix Bitcoin so that it saves us. A better attitude is we're here to save Bitcoin, to prevent it from turning into something that becomes our violent enemy that works against our humanity. Monasteries, yes, they had their scriptoria and they safeguarded the knowledge and so forth. But there's a danger there too, which is, the true purpose of the monastery is not to hoard knowledge. It's not to hoard manuscripts and watch number of manuscripts go up. You gotta be spending your spiritual treasure, investing your spiritual treasure, to use the language of another parable. A monastery is not best off descending to the level of philosophical study and philosophical speculation. This was a big controversy in the Eastern Roman Empire. You had Barlaam, who was one of these very learned, philosophically inclined monks. who was going around in Italy saying, well, all these monks who just sit there and pray all day and they try to, achieve theosis or approach union with God. This is ridiculous. The best that we can do is to just become expert philosophers, basically. And that was a direct challenge to the holy practice of monasticism in the church, and it required one of its great champions, my name saint, Gregory Palamas, Saint Gregory, to step forth and do intellectual battle, theological battle with Barlaam, and he ended up winning. He defended the ancient ways of the church and of monasticism. That was focused first and foremost on acquiring the Holy Spirit, on preparing and purifying the heart so that God could abide there as he wants to do in all of our hearts. And this is celebrated to this day as sort of a landmark achievement in the history of the holy tradition of the church. And so as much as, yes, it's still... in spite of it all, it's still almost intuitive for Westerners to kind of dimly remember that there was once a time when things got so bad that it required monasteries to kind of scrape back together the basic knowledge and the inheritance of the West and start building civilization back from that. And I certainly don't want to discount that. Good pal of mine, Luke Burgess, is working on a project named after Cluny, the Abbey of Cluny, the great monastery during the height of the Middle Ages that did performed exactly this function of sort of restoring civil society and markets and knowledge and learning. And if you want to know where towns come from, put a monastery there and see what grows around it. That's all very important, but can't lose sight of the fact that the primary purpose of the monastery and the spiritual authority and the grace that flows from the monastery is not a result of how learned or philosophical the monks are, but of how humbly devoted they are to the spiritual athleticism of repentance, of prayer, of labor, of being under obedience. Things that are all deeply at odds with what most people think of as the American dream. Where it's just like have an amazing idea and just like go for it, and then you get it, and it's amazing, and right. But these are things that reflect and that exhibit certain aspects of the human character of the human condition, and I doubt that either of them will disappear from human experience for a very long time. And so, in that sense, it's really not about trying to use spiritual weapons to kill off the practices of people who you think are wrong. We're not supposed to judge in that way, but we are supposed to recognize sin and error and self-harm and demonic ways of being, and create counterweights to that. So I think as we see Bitcoin succeed in some ways, fail in others, succeed in some ways that were kind of unanticipated. When BlackRock is like, yes, this is great, and some people kind of feel this strange feeling of like, not like this. As we see all that sort of unfold, I think it's becoming clearer that, absent spiritual authorities you can trust, you can just sit back and watch this incredibly powerful, world computer slip out of the grasp of ordinary people and slip further away from what you would want to see from a financial system where the souls of ordinary people matter a lot, and slip into a different and more dangerous mode.
I mean, I see the lingo a lot of, priests of the cyborg theocracy. And indeed, there is a secular priesthood occurring within tech where people preach a new type of theocracy. You see the CEO of Google talking about how AGI, artificial general intelligence, to be like a god.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I see it in I forget the terms that they're using, but out of the Ethereum crowd, you get this it's kind of freaky actually. Um, this worship of the machine as a spiritual entity, and the way that it is presented to the world is the iconic imagery of it. It does not look, it looks demonic. And it makes you think like, okay, well, there's definitely a spiritual thirst that people are aiming at with technology. They want to fulfill some sort of spiritual thirst. What's the church around you? Is this something that is happening? I understand you're Orthodox. Are they having these conversations?
Yeah, they are having these conversations, and Orthodoxy is experiencing tremendous growth right now. Usually, in polls of religious attitudes in America, there isn't even like a line for the Orthodox. It's other, and it's like less than 1%. But the growth is truly incredible. It is. I think it will continue to grow. But we have to remember, and the Orthodox are as a rule very good at remembering this, that the church is a hospital. It's Christ is portrayed as the physician of our souls and bodies, and that means that you should expect the people standing to your left and your right, and you should expect you yourself to be spiritually ill and in need of healing. And so when new people come into the church, I think it is a powerful reminder of this. And what you see showing up in the scene right now is, a lot of guys are coming to the church through the internet, through the Orthobros, kind of getting, jumping online and posting memes, posting icons, posting quotes from the saints, but also, occasionally just kind of throwing their own takes in there, and they read the Philokalia and think that they have the spiritual authority to start schooling people on the internet about theological matters. And, would that it were so simple, but it's not that simple. And spiritual discipline and spiritual athleticism demand much more than just, hitting the right reading list or posting the right memes. And so some of the, at least a few priests in a couple of churches around the country who I know have faced this directly, and they say online and off, you guys, I'm glad that you're here, and part of being here is to recognize that you do need to log off from time to time, and the point of being Orthodox is not to savagely own people on the internet who are not Orthodox, or who are saying things that you think are theologically wrong. So that is, but again, in the same sense that a lot of people get worked up about digital technology, a lot of people are scared, angry, excited, worshipful, whatever. Digital is different in some fundamental ways. I talked about how suddenly, it's enabled technology to behave in ways that we thought only demons and angels could behave. But in other ways, it's just another damn technology, and every time we have a new communications medium kind of spread over the world, people just succumb so easily to the temptation to see the world as that technology. The printing press comes along. People say, oh, the world is like a book. Life is like a book, right? TV comes along, cinema. People think, oh, life is like a movie. And then AI comes along and people are like, life must be a simulation. It's just, you see it like clockwork, like every, whatever it is, couple hundred years or maybe more, depending on where you draw the lines. And this is happening again, and we should recognize it for what it is. We're not living in a simulation. We're not living inside of a computer just because we surround ourselves with computers and spend a lot of our time kind of in cyberspace. we should recognize that what is true spiritually is true eternally, now, always, and forever, in this place and in any place, and in this time and at any time.
Heavy but real. Wow. So a lot of a lot of this way of thinking comes from an understanding of what it is to preserve knowledge, the global truth ledger that Bitcoin is, and how it grounds us to a preservation of our history, who we are, and how we communicate with each other in a place that we can trust, that is not Sybil attack by third parties.
Mm-hmm.
Protestantism is a branch of Christianity that has many different interpretations of what Christianity is. And I see the Orthodox Church being a lot of the Ortho bros that have embraced Bitcoin to have been really leading the charge on connecting that Christian tradition of the origins of Christianity, proper, Catholicism, right? Apostolic succession, connecting that with and seeing how they have to marry that with the truth ledger that is Bitcoin. In a world of so much confusion, I see that the Protestant mind probably doesn't have it seems as if there's something missing for the Protestant worldview to make that connection between a truth ledger that is necessary and important versus not having one, and I just kind of follow whatever the Holy Spirit dictates me. And in a world of so much noise, and where we're going to have so much more noise with AI, I think that there's going to be a growth in adherence to or discovering traditional Christianity, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy. I think we're going to see a lot of Protestants become Orthodox, in my opinion.
Well, I suspect that that's right. Then again, I would say that I have a good crop of solidly Protestant friends who do understand the promise and the power of Bitcoin, the risks and the opportunities. It's true that they aren't inclined to come at it in the direction that you described, but I will say that they do really intuitively understand from the standpoint of the Second Amendment. They understand that there is a technological equivalent of your gun, of the right to bear arms and use them, and the centrality of that use of arms to protecting not just yourself, but your family, your community, your church. They get that. I'm a media guy, got a couple different media properties going. I do stuff in books and in print magazines and TV shows and online stuff. And there's a Protestant mag out there called American Reformer, just started accepting Bitcoin. So there is an awareness, and every Christianity, every doctrine has its particular challenges and temptations. Back when I was in grad school, I was a student of Alexis de Tocqueville. I wrote my first book on Tocqueville. And he was convinced that for all the good that democratic life brings, it does cause people to experience some profound psychological and maybe even spiritual weaknesses to make them vulnerable in a certain way. And he was convinced that as Americans experience the pain of feeling so interchangeable and insignificant, a pain that American style Christianity seemed only sometimes to abate. His wager was that Americans would gradually but inexorably turned to the ancient church, which for him, being a sort of lapsed Catholic who felt guilty about it, like probably a good lapsed Catholic is supposed to, for him that meant Rome. It meant the Latin Church. I think that thesis reflects something profound about the church and about America. And I think that knowing what we know now about how orthodoxy has spread and continues to spread through America, I don't think Tocqueville's thesis has been invalidated per se, but I certainly think that it's due for an update.
So I think I don't know how much more time you have, but I have a question that I'm dying to ask you.
Yeah, let's. Well, my sweet wife has made me dinner, and so I would really be making a huge mistake if I didn't make this the last question here.
All right, perfect. This is, I think, the banger. We're using Christianity. We're dialoguing with Christianity to understand what this technology is in reference to our humanity, our human experience. What is the cyborg theocracy dialoguing with? What is their approach? What is their theological, philosophical telos for having for their approach to transhumanism, artificial wombs?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that I would say that it's Gnosticism. That's the ancient religious touchstone that cyborg theocracy sort of harkens unto or proposes to complete or perfect. It's interesting, Gnosticism has been present and recurringly so. It seems to be very difficult to purge Gnosticism from Christianity or from sort of the Jewish religious tradition that emerged after Christ and after the Roman, sort of the final Roman conquest. This kind of occult drive to renounce our humanity, to liberate ourselves from our humanity, to become not one with God, but one with the angels or one with the demons, to emancipate the spirit from the prison of the body. All of these are to transcend sex and gender or to fuse them into one. All of these things are sort of, classic Gnostic tropes. The Western Christians had the Cathars. The Eastern Christians had the Bogomils. The Jews have, Kabbalah these days can mean like a lot of different things, but there's that whole kind of occult, Judaic, theology, out there. Some of that stuff kind of really got going in Habsburg Europe, strangely, and probably, carried over, into England in certain ways. Freemasonry, all that kind of stuff. It's been around for a long time. It seems to be very difficult to eradicate, and it seems that in the West, when it comes to the church and the ancient church, one and the same, that temptation toward the Gnostic heresy has always kind of been lurking in there. It certainly seems to be the kind of thing that if you asked Satan how he might feel about Gnosticism, he would probably respond that, yes, keep going. And so I think, if people are trying to put some meat on the bones of this idea of the cyborg theocracy in the context of the history of theology in the church and of sort of Western thought, that's where I look.
James, thank you so much for being with us. Guys, you can find his book on canonic.xyz. I'll put the link below. Where can people find you, James? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, I am out there on X, as I have been since 2008, which is a frightening thing to think about, at James Poulos. I do lots of stuff in media for Blaze Media. There's Return, which is my little tech publication that got acquired by Blaze last year. Frontier is the print magazine. It's just coming out, hot off the presses. I think you're really going to like it if you like that big, large format, full color. It's tech, it's arts, it's culture, a little bit of politics, not too much. And then the interview show. I do a show, it's called 0 Hour, interviewing technologists and politicians and sort of leading figures in culture, and that's on Blaze TV. So that should be more than enough for people to digest. Really appreciate the talk, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being with us. Peace, love, and build the monasteries. Take care.
Now we are dealing with a possible world war. Some will say we are already in a world war. My condolences and prayers go out to everyone suffering under tyranny. It really sucks. I'm really sorry. But it seems as if people are starting to wake up regarding crypto more and more each day. And so it's in the description right here to read, where we give our secret sauce and what we teach our subscribers, because things are just that bad. You know, everyone needs this information. People need to know about sound cryptocurrencies that are actually private by default, and to know how to properly use crypto.